I'll never forget the shock of that afternoon, the moment my garage door motor whirred and lifted, only for me to see a sight so absurd it froze me in place. There, squatting in the middle of my garage like a giant black beetle, sat Karen Mitchell's SUV. Doors locked, engine cold, not a soul around. First, I thought maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I'd opened the wrong garage. Then disbelief gave way to fury. Who on earth parks their car inside someone else's garage? Without asking, without reason, without so much as a note on the windshield. I stood there motionless, for a good half-minute before instinct kicked in. With a single press of the remote, the door slid back down, sealing Karen's prized tank inside like a criminal in a holding cell. To understand why this moment mattered so much, you have to know Karen Mitchell. For 3 years she'd ruled Maple Grove Estates as its HOA president, and in that time she had transformed a quiet suburban neighborhood into her personal empire of nitpicking tyranny. She measured lawns with an actual ruler, issued fines for flower pots in the wrong shade of terracotta, and once charged Mrs. Henderson $50 because her garden gnome was deemed aesthetic non-compliant. Karen was relentless, driving her shiny black SUV, complete with Feuds vanity plates, patrolling the streets like a bounty hunter hunting suburban infractions. Her clipboard was her scepter, her laminated rulebook her scripture, and her sense of authority limitless. My own battles with her had begun just 2 weeks earlier, when I installed a decorative wrought iron mailbox post. It looked beautiful, sturdy, and, if anything, boosted curb appeal. But to Karen it was unapproved. She slapped me with a violation notice demanding I replace it within 72 hours with a standard dull gray box the HOA preferred. When I politely explained that my mailbox met postal regulations and actually improved property values, she seemed to take it as a personal insult. From that day on, she zeroed in on my home like a hawk. She measured my grass at 6 separate spots, photographed my trash bins from multiple angles, and even counted the number of seasonal decorations on my porch. Then came that Tuesday. I was trimming hedges when I heard the unmistakable slam of a car door in my driveway. Curious, I peeked through the kitchen window, only to see Karen striding toward my front door, clipboard in hand, measuring tape swinging at her hip like a weapon. But instead of knocking, she stopped short. She saw my garage door was open, and without hesitation, drove her SUV straight inside as if she owned the place. She parked square in the middle. No attempt to leave space, no courtesy. Just plopped it there like it was hers. Then she got out and began poking around. She photographed my lawnmower, my workbench, my recycling bins. She muttered under her breath about unapproved storage, as though she were cataloging evidence. She rifled through gardening supplies, opened containers, scribbled notes on her clipboard, and even commented aloud about the bicycle hanging from the rafters. For 15 minutes, she prowled my garage like an inspector in a crime lab. When she finally left to scrutinize my mulch beds and landscaping, she didn't even bother moving her SUV. It stayed parked dead center, blocking the entire space where my car belonged. From my kitchen window, I watched her parade around my yard for another 20 minutes, measuring distances between plants, holding samples up to the sunlight, and cross-referencing them against her laminated HOA Bible. The whole time, her vehicle sat there in my garage, like she was family, like she had a right. By the time I came back home later that evening and saw it for myself, I snapped. This wasn't about mulch or mailboxes. This was trespassing. Plain and simple. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. Calmly, I explained that someone had parked their vehicle inside my private garage without permission, and I needed an officer to resolve it. Meanwhile, I checked my security cameras. Every single second of Karen's intrusion had been captured in sharp, high-definition detail. About 20 minutes later, just as the adrenaline started to level out, Karen marched back up my driveway, clipboard in hand, a badge clipped to her blouse like a sheriff's star. The moment she saw my garage door sealed, her face twisted in outrage. She pounded on it with her fist and shouted about violations and community standards. When I opened the front door, she didn't waste a second before launching into one of her tirades. She ranted about my unapproved mulch, threatened me with a $500 fine, and demanded I open the garage immediately so she could retrieve her vehicle and continue her inspection. Karen actually had the gall to declare that, as HOA president, she had the right to enter any property for compliance checks. My refusal, she shrieked, was obstruction of official HOA business. Her voice grew shriller with each sentence, her clipboard flailing like a conductor's baton in the world's angriest orchestra. She threatened legal action, emergency board meetings, daily fines, the full arsenal of suburban intimidation. I stayed perfectly calm. And then I asked her the one question that made her stumble. When exactly did I give you permission to park your SUV in my garage? For once, Karen didn't have an immediate comeback. She stammered something about it being temporarily necessary for her duties, and insisted I should be grateful she was upholding the community's high standards. But it was too late. The line had been crossed. That was the moment I calmly informed Karen that every second of her little inspection had been captured on my security cameras, and that police officers were already on their way. The shift in her face was instant. The smug certainty drained out, leaving behind something pale and nervous. For the first time since I'd known her, Karen Mitchell looked like she realized she'd gone too far. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars pulled up, Officer Rodriguez and Officer Chan stepping out. I watched Karen straighten her blouse, lift her chin, and plaster on the same fake professional mask she always wore at HOA meetings. She marched toward them, clipboard tucked under one arm like a shield, and introduced herself with the self-importance of a diplomat. I'm the president of the Maple Grove Estates HOA, she declared, holding up her laminated badge as if it were a federal credential. I was conducting an official compliance inspection. I had to temporarily use this homeowner's garage during my duties, and now he is unlawfully detaining my vehicle. The officers listened patiently, their expressions unreadable. Then they turned to me. Sir, can you show us your side of the story? I pulled out my phone, opened the security footage, and handed it to Officer Rodriguez. Frame by frame, the video revealed everything. Karen driving her SUV into my garage without permission, wandering around my property, rummaging through containers, snapping photos of my belongings, and then strolling into my yard while leaving her car parked like it belonged to her. The timestamp didn't lie. Over an hour of trespassing. Rodriguez looked up, his brows raised slightly. Ms. Mitchell, he asked evenly, did you at any point have permission to enter this garage? Karen's face flushed crimson. She hesitated, then stammered. Well, no, not explicitly. But as HOA president, I do have authority to. That was as far as she got. Officer Chan cut in firmly. Ma'am, HOA authority does not grant you the right to enter private property. Parking your vehicle inside someone's garage is trespassing. Depending on circumstances, it could also be considered unlawful entry. Karen's mask cracked. She tried to salvage it, her voice growing sharper, louder, more desperate. You don't understand. Community standards must be enforced. Property rights don't outweigh the greater good. And then came her fatal mistake. She turned on Officer Rodriguez, jabbing her finger into his chest. You clearly don't understand HOA law. If you don't force him to open that garage right now, I'll have your badge. I'll have your job. Get me your supervisor immediately. This man is the criminal, not me. Rodriguez didn't flinch. Ma'am, step back, he ordered. But Karen had lost all control. She was red-faced, shrieking about bylaws and violations, waving her clipboard like a weapon. Her voice carried down the entire street, drawing curtains back as neighbors peeked out from behind windows. That's when Rodriguez had enough. In one smooth motion, he pulled out his handcuffs. Karen Mitchell, you're under arrest for trespassing, harassment, and unauthorized use of private property. Her shrieks cut off mid-sentence. For a split second, she just stared at him, eyes wide, as though the world had tilted beneath her feet. Then came the pleading, panicked, desperate, humiliating. But it didn't matter. In front of the very neighbor she had terrorized for years, Karen Mitchell, the self-appointed queen of Maple Grove Estates, was handcuffed in my driveway and led to a waiting patrol car. The clipboard never left her grip until Officer Chan finally pried it from her fingers. By that evening, the footage was on the local news. Every channel showed the HOA president being walked to the cruiser, her face frozen between outrage and disbelief. The next day, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. The vote to remove her was unanimous. The newspaper ran her mugshot beside an exposé on HOA overreach. Practically overnight, Karen Mitchell became the poster child for everything wrong with neighborhood associations. In court, she stood stiff as the judge sentenced her to 6 months probation, 200 hours of community service, and $1,500 in fines and court costs. I was there in that courtroom, standing just a few rows away, when the gavel struck. For the first time since she'd taken control of our neighborhood, Karen Mitchell wasn't in charge. She wasn't the enforcer, the judge, the queen with her clipboard scepter. She was just another defendant, finally held accountable. And I'll admit, it was the most satisfying moment I'd ever witnessed.